Hello everyone. Welcome to ARINGO's Coffee Chat series. I am Priyanka, and today we are talking about the topic that a lot of candidates, they were confused about it, that how they can expand their application portfolio for round one. So that is what we are talking about today. Applying to more schools in the round one of MBA applications. These days, Jennifer, when we talk to the candidates, we see that they are in a constant dilemma. Like we are in mid-August, round one application deadlines are fast approaching. So they're confused between like two things. At one point, at one part, that they're like they want to maximize their chances because round one has maximum scholarships, maximum seat availability, etc. But parallelly they are very overwhelmed by the amount of sheer volume of the essay writing that is required when you prepare for multiple applications. So they don't know which road to choose, and this session is what we are talking about, is that how we can break this bottleneck. So our idea of the session would be that we would try that how you can maximize the number of applications, that we are saying that how you can do that, what are the strategies that you can apply by not burning out and also by not compromising on the quality of your application. So we need to take care of these two things as well. So Jen, here we have a CEO of Aringo, who will be joining us and helping us with this topic. Jen, can you tell us something about how you are also speaking to candidates? How's everything going around this point?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Priyanka. I'm so excited that we're covering this topic because it is something where people just get overwhelmed and then just think, oh my gosh, I'm just going to like rapid fire apply to as many schools as possible. And they can make some really big mistakes. So I think it's really good that we kind of talk about this, how to kind of navigate this really high stress time. It's 1 month until really like application deadlines start. And so we want to make sure that we give people the best possible advice for being able to scale their strategy for round one and do so efficiently.
Yeah. So before I start, Jennifer, I want to let everybody know that we'll also be doing a Q&A session towards the end of the session. So everybody can, if you have any questions pertaining to this topic or anything pertaining to your MBA application specifically, you can write those in in the chat box, and we will take it up towards the end. All right. So Jen, let's talk about the big picture here. Like most applicants, as I mentioned, that they want to apply to round one, but like they have two, three top choice program. Those schools they really want to apply, and they believe that writing a brand new essay takes weeks of preparation. So how they can strategically expand their application portfolio? How can they add more schools here?
Yeah, so and thank you again. I'm excited. So the biggest mistake that I see applicants make in August is treating every single application as an isolated application and that they have to build every one from scratch, or the opposite of like rapid fire, just change the school name and be good to go. So the best way is, to scale your list is by thinking of it as a portfolio strategy. This means that you want to kind of combine your anchor schools that require a bit more of that heavy lifting, along with some other schools that are like low friction, right? And so the schools that are like having shorter prompts or that have overlapping essay themes, or maybe they even have later deadlines. Also, some applicants panic thinking round one deadlines hit all in the first week of September, and that's really not true. While schools like Harvard, Wharton, Columbia all have early September cutoffs, several top ranked programs have round one deadlines that stretch into late September and even early October. Programs like Duke, Dartmouth, Keenan Flagler, Vanderbilt Owen, and then there's a couple that give you some extra time. And so really quickly, I am going to share my screen. So one moment, please. Okay, perfect. So yeah, this is our intro screen that I forgot to share. But next is this screen. So if you look at these deadlines that are mentioned on this sheet, you can see that there are some breaks in this schedule. So you could apply in the next couple of weeks to a couple of schools. There's some of them actually, like Duke has early action, and you'll see that throughout. And those are really great schools. Like if you're definite, like you want to go to this school, it's your number one choice, you'd be happy to go to this school, and drop every other school, then this is the perfect round for you. So definitely take advantage of that. But you can see, Cambridge and Oxford both have a bit slighter early deadlines. And I'll tell you kind of the secret to some of this is that if they have a little bit of an earlier deadline, then they have a little bit earlier notification between the cycle of when people are going to be able to get interviewed and then when they will also get offers, essentially. And their plan is that if they offer it to you early, that maybe you'll take their offer and then not necessarily apply to any other school. So you'll see some strategy in here that other schools have kind of applied to kind of say like, okay, maybe we can sneak in and get some sort of advantage by being earlier or later. And we'll kind of cover that a little bit too. So, so you do have kind of this week ahead of the deadlines of September 4th through the 7th. And then we have like a really heavy week of heavy hitting of, a lot of really big names. And so, but I would say that there is the advantage of the fact that there is kind of a little bit of a break. You've got like 3-4 days in between where there's not a deadline from September 10th all the way to September 15th. So this gives you some time to have a bit of a reprieve and to be able to, kind of say like, okay, now I can, finish polishing these essays and then kind of move on. And then you'll see there's another gap that kind of happens at the end of October. But by breaking it down into these kind of sections, you can start to think about, okay, I can, pick a couple from here and a couple from there as one of your strategies. The other one we'll kind of get into next is, talking about the essay components. But this is one way to kind of start to think about your plan. And Priyanka, I know I added this slide that you didn't know about. So if you have anything to add,
No,
excellent.
I think that, telling about this deadline, there's because everybody think that, oh, round one is like early September. That's in a panic mode that is what they think. But when you have a clear picture, when you actually jot down all the schools with their deadlines, and we see it's a very big spread, in the entire month and the month thereafter as well. Okay. So yes, this is a clear picture, and Jen, thank you for adding this. And everybody, you can take a screenshot, and if anybody needs, you can email Jen and ask for this, and we'll be happy sharing with you this detail as well, the entire deadline timetable maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have talked about the timeline here, Jen. The next thing I want to talk about is, are there applications that we can say they are shorter MBA applications? Like maybe they require less time to fill out those application forms, or maybe the number of essays are less, or maybe the word count is less. So can you help us identify some shorter MBA applications also?
Yeah, so there are some fantastic top tier programs that are going to use non-traditional or short form applications that you can complete much faster. So like Duke Fuqua has their 25 random things. So that's not necessarily you having to do a lot of research. It's more of like brainstorming, who you are and what you've done, breaking it down to kind of like 3 different categories and then refining, right? And then there's beyond that, there's the short goals prompt, which allows you to kind of, talk more about your personality and achievements without, writing this long, dense academic essay. And so if you are pretty solid in what your core life and career highlights are, Fuqua can actually be a really quick application, or just a rather fast application, so to say. Another one is NYU Stern. So Stern has that Pick Six essay where you're going to be uploading 6 different images, and you're going to add some captions and tell them the personal story behind it, which replaces, a lot of, longer essays all in once. So they have that. Plus, I think there's like one other essay that has to go with that. And then if we kind of look at our UK programs of Cambridge and Oxford, these are, top tier programs that really do favor kind of a short and direct prompt of, like 200 to 300 words. And they're asking about specific professional challenges or goals rather than the massive personal manifestos. So those can definitely like come to your advantage there. And then they have the opportunity to bring that out between like the video essays as well as, your interview as well. So then the next one that also are like some more like US ones that are in the top 15, Cornell and Tepper. These schools actually have a notorious kind of short application. And so they really want to focus on your core goals and the immediate fit. And so they keep these kind of more of concise but high impact. And then there's Berkeley Haas with 2 essays with 300 word count and then the video essay. So these are some that you can think about like tackling, like if these are on your list or, something that you would want to consider, I would definitely kind of jump in both feet and think of like, okay, these can be a little bit faster and not as daunting as maybe a Stanford application with, 2 large essays and then 3 impact essays and a lot of soul searching. These can be a lot more concise and direct to the point.
Yes, I think that helps. These essays, like you have mentioned, the Haas essays, UK school, not UK, I'm sorry, Cambridge essays, Oxford essays, and all NYU, and especially NYU and Duke essays. Those are interesting essays. Okay, you don't have to write those 500 word long essays there. They are short, they are descriptive, they are, you are describing something very unique to yourself, and that does not take a lot of time in comparison to other applications. As Jen said, that they have 500 word essay or 750 word essay, and those takes a lot of time. So Jen, you mentioned that a lot of schools like UK schools have career essays, etc., very straightforward goals essay. So can we talk about essay recycling? I'm not sure if I'm using the right word here. So, how can candidates use essays that they're using in a particular application, particular school? Can they repurpose, recycle those for a different school by making some changes? Is it okay doing this? Well, that candidate do not want that it should look generic or copy pasting, but
Yeah.
is a workaround on that?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that this is like something that you hear time and time again from adcoms is they know when you have essentially kind of copy and pasted one essay from one school to the other. So what I would propose, what the better strategy is to think of things as kind of like your master story module, so to say. I would say about 70 to 80% of all MBA essay prompts fall into like 3 different categories. One is going to be your career goals / like kind of like the why MBA prompt. So like Columbia, Wharton, Chicago, Booth, and Kellogg, they all kind of have like the same fundamental question of what are your short-term, long-term goals and why is the MBA the right bridge? And so essentially you can kind of boil this down into I would say kind of like I don't want to again like say like you want to use the same essay per each one, but I would say write this out and be able to rephrase it and tailor it to each one of these schools, but have it written down more generically so that you can customize it to each one of these schools. But, having it somewhere in written makes it a lot easier for you to take it and move it to the next school and say, okay, now why is this school the right one for me? And customizing it a bit more with career outcomes, looking at their employment report, et cetera, is like a good way to do that. So the other category that we also see is leadership and kind of like key impact. So Harvard, Stanford, London Business School, INSEAD, they all ask for examples of pivotal professional impact and leadership. And so what you want to do is kind of go ahead and prepare 2 to 3 different scenarios from your experience. And some of them can be professional and some of them actually could be either, while you were, like if you were in a family business and things happened much earlier, you're an entrepreneur and things could have happened earlier. Or let's say that like what's really driving you to make this move through the MBA is more of something that you're passionate about. And so take those situations, write them down, and start to break them down into the STAR method, right? So if you haven't heard of the STAR method, it is where you kind of take each one of your experiences and you kind of break it down into what the situation was, what the task at hand was, and then the action that you took and the results. And then even bigger than that, like a lot of times we also say add an L at the end for what you learned. So take that method, go ahead and parse out, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 situations if you're lucky to kind of be able to talk about that. This also will help you when you start to prepare for interviews to have these already kind of written out and thought about. So then the last category is kind of like a little bit of like a catch-all, but it's, a little bit about diversity, community, and inclusion. So schools that typically have something like this is going to be Ross, Fuqua, Anderson, and Berkeley Haas. So they want you to be able to talk about this situation. And so what I would recommend is to, kind of write one master narrative about how you contribute to a team, dynamics, or, the community initiatives, and then you can adapt them to fit each one of these schools specifically by kind of adapting it to the persona of the school. And that's, kind of the better way that I can kind of you can kind of master this last section. And again, like, as you're looking at this as a big picture, I would say that it's important to still do your school research and incorporate it into each one of these essays. Again, each one of these schools want to feel special. They don't want to feel like they were the fast application, so you just did it really quickly. This is how you master that skill, is by really starting to organize yourself and move through it. A lot of the times people could consider using AI to do this, and I would caution you from doing that, but more of the research can help you. AI can help you with the research side, right? Like, so, I really want to do X, Y, and Z. Why would, Fuqua be the right place for me? And then it can bring things out, and then you want to go and double check, because sometimes it will pull things out of the Wayback Machine, and you're like the adcom's like, oh, this is like, not a red flag, but like this shows like they kind of just trusted what was, AI told them, instead of like looking at our current website to see like this isn't an initiative, or we don't call it that anymore. Sorry, I kind of get in the weeds here because I just get excited. So this is kind of the way to almost like reuse or adapt your essays or the topics from one school to the next, and do it in a faster way.
I think that's a wonderful suggestion, Jen. So we are talking about, one is creating like some master essays on particular topics like career goals, inclusion, and contribution, etc. Some leadership stories, etc. And second, we are also talking about the research part, the networking part. That is that the fine line that where you customize the essay when you make the school special, as you say, that that school is the candidate's first choice. Is we cannot ignore the school research part. Use AI, but don't just believe what AI says. And do your own research, talk to people, talk to current students, alumni, attend sessions. Those are very important, very good way of connecting to schools people. And the third part is that this will also help you in interview. As you said, it is just not restricted to your only essay writing process. This master file can help you in further interview preparation, and can help enhance that as well. So thank you, Jen. I think that is really helpful. Uh, Jen, we have talked about short MBA applications, deadlines, and this essay adaptation, as we can well say. Can we also talk about, we also have like rolling application in some schools. So can you throw some light on rolling applications and can we add more schools, the schools that we have rolling application? Is it an advisable thing to do?
Yeah, so rolling admissions is kind of a huge advantage if you get your application in early, right? Like, so if your plan can include rolling admissions schools, then that's fantastic. One school that does this is Columbia Business School for their J term. They don't do that for their fall start. So, but if you're looking at their J term, then you can definitely do that. And this is again like where like they used to do rolling admissions. So if you found some old research, it might be a little confusing. But you know, this is a great example. Like if you're considering the J term at Columbia, the other schools that do this are going to be INSEAD, HEC Paris, IE. And these schools kind of review applications as they come in, making applying earlier in the window, giving you faster decisions and turnarounds, and giving you the best possible odds for getting a seat with your profile and your applicant pool. So now I really want to talk about quality control. So we don't want to sacrifice quantity or quality for quantity. We want to apply kind of a tiered strategy. So what I would say is looking at your anchor school. So look at your top 2 dream schools from this round, and these are the ones that are going to be highly researched, highly tailored, and ready to go from scratch. Then your tier 2 schools, those are the ones that maybe you could submit the application a little bit faster. And so you can pick, 2 to 3, or maybe a little bit more depending on your capacity, especially since we're a month out. But, think about those and where you can leverage overlapping essay content and the streamlined format that they're offering for you to be able to kind of submit a faster and more simple application. So before you decide if you can keep the same career goals and companies, again, I want to caution you to look at the school's employment report. Those do vary from school to school. So looking at, what the employers are, especially like if you're looking at schools from different regions. So like if you're interested in product management, generally, like the schools in the Northeast have a bit more of a tech lean, as well as the ones on the West Coast, and maybe even like more of like a finance lean in the Northeast. But then, the schools in the heartland of the US, like Kellogg and Booth, they're going to be a bit more consumer products, right? So think about incorporating that to, again, show your research and what you wanted. Of course, all the big names recruited all of these top schools. They are top MBA programs. But it helps with showing that you've done your research and you know that this school has a special connection to one, company or the other. I also caution clients from just putting that like, oh, I want to go to MBB. So I always kind of say you want to break that list up just a little bit by saying like, I'm also open to like tier 2 consulting firms. So again, look and see if it's like EY or Eli. Anyways,
Deloitte?
Deloitte. Yes, sorry. All of a sudden, I can't think of any other name. Oliver Wyman is what I was thinking of, right? So, think about what the other, what are their top consulting firms are that are recruiting at that school, and looking at that employment report. Do the same thing for the tech employers as well, because again, like if you're applying on the West Coast. A really big one could be Microsoft or HP, since they have offices in Washington and Portland or in Oregon. So, adapting a little bit, again, like goes a long way in showing that school that you've done your research.
Thanks, Jen. I think those are very clear examples and give all the people, the audience today, that a clear roadmap. Like those are actionable items that one can do to increase their number of applications. So now we are opening the floor for questions. So you have any questions pertaining to this topic, as I mentioned earlier, or anything with regards to MBA applications in particular, please, write it in the chat box and we would love to take them. Uh, Jen, while we are taking the question, I also have a few questions that the candidates have asked while they were registering for this session. Like one of the questions were that uh, which one is okay, like submitting three perfect stellar applications kind of thing, or submitting like good above average kind of five applications in round one. Which one
Yes.
should choose?
Yeah, so I definitely say quality comes first. But I mean, I also understand being strategic. So again, like looking at what your anchor schools are and then how you can add in some of the faster track applications would be the best idea. Again, like thinking about your profile specifically and being able to like be honest in your evaluation of like, okay, so do I have any red flags or gaps that maybe could be concerning? And the more that you put into the application to show that you're a good fit and that you can overcome maybe a low quant score or lack of a quant background or maybe a low GPA or whatever it might be, is by putting it into the application for themselves. So, again, like quality versus quantity, quality kind of wins for me in this category.
Thanks, Jen. We have a question from Osama here. So, hi, Osama. Can applying with a test waiver in round one affect scholarship chances?
So no, I, I I would say that there's some schools that will be a bit more strict on, having that it needs to be related to ways that you bring up the profile of the school. That's what merit scholarship is about. And a lot of the times, it's the easiest lever is like what your GMAT or GRE score is and how much higher it is than the average. But I wouldn't say that that's the only thing that a school looks at. I think we talked about this. It was the last coffee chat, but we had we've had multiple students that applied for test waivers and got admitted with scholarship. One of them even full ride to Cornell. So I wouldn't say that it's a barrier for scholarship, but it means that you need to really prove why you need to be there.
Yes. And Jennifer, also, just to add here, can you please also put your calendar link in the chat box? So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to schedule a session with Jennifer, Sayed, if you want to have, understand your eligibility for a waiver, because I think you might want to apply with a waiver. So Jennifer can also look at your profile and give you an insight on, if your profile is strong enough for test waiver eligibility and how you can maximize on scholarship as well. Next question we have is from Shantanu. Hi, Shantanu. Can you please share two to three examples of how to make the application personalized to a university while using the similar essay content?
Yeah. So the way to do this, and it's kind of, we talked about it a little bit by looking at the employment report. I think the other thing is by looking at the persona of the school. So some really easy ones is like Duke Fuqua is really like family. They call it or Team Fuqua, and they're really interested in like people who want that small community feeling. But there's other ones that do as well. So like Cornell is really big on a tight knit community as well. So you can use that, especially for schools that are not in large cities. So the ones that are almost like in college towns, those are the ones that are going to have some overlapping themes when it comes to what you want out of an MBA, and being able to leverage that desire or ability or background is going to be helpful from one school to the next. And then the other one would be, looking at the clubs and activities. So if there's, something specific to you, like let's say that you really like sports, but you like cricket the most, by looking at the different schools, you could see if they have like a sports, MBA sports team, or if they have, specific sport teams, right? Like, so whether it's like all sports or specific ones. So some of them break them out, and like even the European schools actually also compete in MBAT, which is like the MBA tournament of like athletics, and it's like the MBA Olympics. So you could even throw that in there too. So when you go to do that research, it's like, okay, so like here I can tweak it just a little bit more. But looking at the clubs, like so finance club, investment banking club, the things that you want to get out of that club are not going to be all that different from school to school, but they might have different names or different events that you want to reference. So you can kind of think about that too. The other thing would be any interaction that you've had with students. If you've had them multiple, with multiple people, and they've kind of said the same thing about each school, you can kind of incorporate that into the essay and easily kind of adapt it from one school to the other, but making it, again, part of your core essay is to, okay, now I need to insert some sort of like type of like or like our affirmation of like this school, and I can use some sort of student content that said, this is something that specifically happens at this school that helped somebody move forward in their career.
Yes, I think that when you interact with students, as Jen said, it's always good to use their names, maybe their year of passing, etc., like class of XX, the name of the person, and you can talk about also. I think you can talk about the professor names as well, who are good at those schools. So this is how our various ways you can customize those essays and make it more university specific. Next question we have from is Rishabh. Hi, Rishabh. In answering to the part, why choose our MBA, why choose our program for your specific goals? How much specificity is expected? Example, are we supposed to refer to the curriculum, employment reports, or student connect, or anything else?
Okay, so this is an interesting. So why choose our program for your specific goals? So I would say that this is an important one, and it can be slightly generic, like of, oh, I want this or I want that, like, or I want to join the finance club. Like some of that stuff can be kind of generic, but I would say that I I would definitely make sure you've done your research here, right? Specificity, like again, like there are all these little things that we're talking about, like whether that's your like the employers that you're mentioning, the clubs, the people that you spoke to, the curriculum. I'm not a big fan of somebody writing like, I'm so excited about the financial modeling in foreign markets class. Like I'm not, I'm not a big fan of writing an entire title of a course into an essay. So I'm really excited to explore the international financial modeling throughout the curriculum or whatever that might be, or, with Professor so-and-so. So you don't have to, have that specific name, but if there's, a specific class, then maybe you can kind of adapt that from one to the other, and that should be helpful.
Thanks, Jen. I think it's a combination of everything that he has mentioned that needs to create these essays and how you can connect them with your goals. Okay, how you these specific things can come back to your goals and how these will help you advance towards towards the direction that's how it can help. And Rishabh, I would also recommend that you have a one-on-one profile evaluation with Jen, so that when we know what your goals are exactly and what you are trying to achieve with an MBA program, then that way we can tailor your advice also accordingly, that this is how this is your profile, and if this is your goal, this is how you can target an MBA application. So that's how you can go about it. Next question we have is from MJ. Hi, MJ. Are GMAT GRE scores factored in while offering scholarships? I already have a 330 on GRE, so should I invest my time in improving my score for better scholarship chances?
So what I would say is that it is part of the consideration. Most schools are looking at how can you, one, are you a fit? That's always going to be the big thing. But then the next thing is how can you increase the profile of that school for merit or rankings? And so GMAT or GRE average can help. So if your GRE is above the average for that school, then you're in a good spot for scholarship consideration in general. But again, it depends from school to school. Like some of the high end M7, their average GRE is slightly higher of like a 333, which is insane. So I would never tell somebody who has a 330 like, oh, you have to go higher. What I would say is, you're admissible at that point. Like if you're within range of the average GMAT for that school, obviously like certain applicant pools are more competitive than others, but I mean like a 330 is pretty darn high. So I would say that now the point to make sure that you're getting in is to show them why you're the one to choose with the 330, right? Like, so that's where I would invest my time, is in the application itself versus maybe taking another exam, unless you can do it in 1 week and you feel like, hey, I can, gain in the GRE a couple more points or 10 more points in the GMAT, and you feel like you could do that in a week, then maybe it's definitely worth it. Like if it's going to put you kind of over the average, or get you into the average range. So it's case by case, but with the 330, I would start focusing on the applications.
Yes. And I think, Jenifer, we always say that scores are one part of the application. Okay. But there can be multiple applications with 330. There can be an application with 329, but an impeccable essay, the way they have portrayed the story, it's a very compelling story, etc. So it's not just about the scores, it's about the entire application, the holistic part. So yes, 330 is a good score. It's a competitive score for almost all schools. So that's how you should go about it. Next question. We have a question again from Shantanu. How specific we need to be while answering why us? Can you please give a few examples?
Yeah, so again, I feel like we've kind of answered this a few different ways, but essentially you want to be able to give them a compelling reason as to why they're your number one choice. Again, like each one of these schools want to be the girl you want to take to the dance, right? Like they want to be your number one pick. And so you've got to show them why versus, just holding out your hand. So with that being said, again, like doing the research and showing the research, that's where they're going to see it. And a lot of the times for me, I feel like conversations with students that are targeted questions of like, I want to go into finance. I want to be in New York. Why would you choose NYU over Columbia? And then they can give you specifics about like different access to different markets or different events, those types of things. You're going to get that insider track that you can't get from surface level of just going to the website. So yeah, that's, like time and time again, it's putting in a little bit of work for that.
Yes. We have another question. So the first question from Ranjini. Hi, Ranjini. Could you please elaborate more about referencing professor name in the essays?
Yeah, so this isn't for everyone, but so um, if you want to if there's a specific field or something that you're wanting to go into and you're drawn to this school because of a specific professor or there's a renowned professor, then that's when you can put the professor's name in there, right? Like I wouldn't just do that for somebody who's like the generic, finance or accounting teacher or something like that. Like there would be like, I'm really excited to learn from Professor X and his research within the Wolverine. Anybody a DC fan? Anyways, so anyways, Professor X. But like looking at his specific research and learning more about his insights into finance or specific markets or whatever that might be. So kind of thinking about like, is there something is there a specific professor that would be really great to reference from my research that I've done that makes sense to me? I wouldn't name drop if it doesn't make sense. That's not going to win you any points, and it's not going to reaffirm things if it doesn't make sense. Like if it, it's not moving the needle because it's too generic.
Yeah, so don't forcefully drop the name of professor. It should make sense to your essays, to your application, I guess. That's what Jenny you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I hope that answered Anjani. Another question we have from Bhavya. So, Jennifer, it's up to you. So, Bhavya is asking that I would like to ask a question on the mic, if that's okay.
We've never done it before, but we could try.
Okay. Can you please just unmute Bhavya so they can talk?
Yeah, hold on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Bhavya, we can.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Jennifer and Priyanka. I was trying to write the question, but I thought it'll be better if I just unmute and ask. So this is regarding the. I think you alluded to it earlier when you were talking about the employment reports. So I'd say there are two parts to my question. The first is that when we are looking at employment reports and there are employers mentioned, a lot of times um, we have a pie chart which has the industries and then we have a list of employers. So it's very difficult to figure out how, like what is the leaning of the school by just looking at that data. So for example, you referred to that consumer products for a Chicago Booth or a Kellogg, but just looking at that data wouldn't give me like those nuances. So how would you recommend that from that long list of employers that's mentioned in the employment report, you're able to figure out the leaning of the school itself?
Yeah, so usually there is something on there that would
So
indicate it.
that's
Like,
the first part of the question.
okay. Okay, yeah. So let me
Sorry,
answer
please go
that.
ahead.
So with that pie chart, whether it's breaking down the sector, I think like that's the one of the bigger things, right? Like if they're bigger at finance or consulting, that will help you. But then, if you're wanting to go into a specific field, then this can be an opportunity for you to, know the different names or the bigger names within the specific industry. The other thing that you could do, and I've not done this before, but maybe this is the opportunity to use ChatGPT and say, hey, like, here's the list of employers. I'm not familiar with them. Can you break them into different categories so I can see, like, how many are from this industry? That's, I guess, versus doing a whole bunch of research on your own. So you can kind of see from there. You can also look at the different pathways that schools offer specifically with Kellogg. Like they have different pathways that you can choose for the different directions you want to go. And usually if they're offering a pathway, means that they usually have strong employment within that field. So that's what I would kind of look at. Like I would also look at maybe like Michigan Ross. They have a MAP program, which is your applied practical learning part of the program, and the partners that partner with them during that process could be a strong indicator of, the industries or companies that are strong recruiters for them.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Jennifer. So the second part to my question is regarding the specific example of consulting. You mentioned about MPB. Given that strategy consulting is a very broad field in itself, and sometimes schools like if you're specific about what sub function that you want to get into, would you recommend talking about that or just leaving it at strategy consulting in MBB or a tier 2 firm? Or like, would you recommend talking more specifically about what kind of functions? But if I understand correctly, usually right after MBA, people do not join specific function teams. I could be wrong about this, but could you throw some
Yes.
light on?
Yeah, no, you're right. So I would say that a lot of the times you either go into strategy or management consulting, right? It's usually those two for the most part, sometimes impact consulting. But beyond that, like the more specific, I would say if it ties into your overall long-term goals, that's where you can start to bring that out of, like, I want to get into consulting and start in strategy and be able to take a deeper dive into this sector, industry, whatever it might be. Or like, let's say like that you want to work with what am I going to say, new ventures, startups, that would be the word. So like if that's kind of like the sector you want to be in and it ties into your past work experience or, something that's making you passionate about that, then you could definitely mention that. Otherwise, I think you're okay with saying like, I want to go into strategy consulting at a firm and then you can mention the firm. And sometimes firms have different industries that they're well known for. So doing a little bit of that research as well. And then you can tie it into the long-term goal if needed. Otherwise, I think you can, still be somewhat generic with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bhavya. And Bhavya, if you want to have, as you mentioned, the goals, etc., if you want to have and not yet had a one-on-one session with Jen, please do so. Then, you can consolidate your queries as well and tailor to your specific profile, and Jen can help you answer that. Coming back, so we have here another question from Shantanu. If someone has low work experience, like example of 2 years, while applying, what elements in the application, apart from a good GMAT score, can better one's chances? Should we elaborate more on leadership roles?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Leadership
Yeah,
roles held in the undergrad or double down on work experience. So
whatever work experience, yeah.
yeah. So here's the thing. So when an MBA program is looking at your work experience, they're really wanting to know what your exposure is. What have you learned that you can bring to the classroom or be able to have an understanding of applying what we're talking about in the classroom? So if you've been head down, you're a software engineer after 2 years, and you haven't worked on a lot of teams and you're an individual contributor, I don't know how much you can add to the classroom as much as you can gain. So it's important, like if you're in software and you're like, this is just the way my industry works and I'm not able to move up yet, then that's where you can leverage your leadership experience outside of work. And that could be through volunteer opportunities. Some people like grew up in family business, like that's another great way to talk about ownership and exposure. But, like if you're applying with 2 years of work experience, I caution you to, check and see what you're going to be able to bring to the classroom discussion. And that's what you want to be able to make sure you're highlighting. So if you have outside leadership experience, then that's where I would do it. Or let's say you're on the community service team or cell in your workplace, then that's something to kind of bring up about that, or projects that you've led. Undergrad is kind of like a little bit of a gray area. I would say like if your undergrad leadership ties strongly into your goals and what you're wanting to do, then absolutely leverage it. If it's more generic of like, I helped with organizing the music fest, but then like your goal is to be in finance, like I feel like there can be some disconnect of like, okay, so what does this have to do with this? The better part is I managed the music fest and I was in charge of all the finances and I was, getting sponsors and all this. And so I was able to increase sponsorship by X% by going to these specific, companies or things like that. Right. So I would use the experience that you have that will make sense to your goals and add to the conversation, or like what they like to say, the tapestry of, what's woven into the tapestry of the MBA cohort itself, and bring something different.
He has an extra question, Jen. Thank you for answering that. But he has one more question. Can you please share some salient points that you have found to be working for someone targeting a scholarship apart from the GMAT score? It's a great question, I guess.
Yeah. So it ends up being school fit and leadership. Those are the things, like I said before, the one candidate who did the GMAT waiver for Cornell and got full scholarship, it was the Park Leadership Fellows program. And that's because that person was able to demonstrate their leadership internally. I think that person, they had some management experience, and that was helpful too for being able to demonstrate what they were able to contribute to the conversation and how they were going to be able to be a strong part of the cohort, and be a leader.
Thanks, Jen. We have another question from Felix. Hi, Felix. What do top admissions committee looks for most in a reapplicant beyond new job responsibilities or higher test scores?
Yeah, so this one is interesting, right? Like, so what's new? I think that the other thing is you don't want to submit the same application because it didn't work, right? So
True.
you still want to keep the essence of what you submitted before. You're still the same person, but maybe you've, I don't want to say like you don't put this in the application, but you've taken a hit, which makes you go back and reevaluate like who you are, what your goals are. And so going back and showing this research of like, I've been able to really dig in and say like, this is, what I want to do. If you did get a new job and you're like, because I want to get this direction, I took on a new job that was going to give me this exposure pre-MBA, blah, blah, blah. But that's really what you want to do is somehow move the lever by showing them that you've done some introspection and to be able to kind of move into this, reapplication of like, I know that this is the right school for me. Because of this. And this is not a fast application. This is the one that you want to put all of your work into and be your anchor school. You don't want to just resubmit the same exact thing. Depending from school to school, some of them will tell you to resubmit new letters of recommendation. Other ones say that, they don't really care. Like, it just depends on the school. They sometimes give advice. You can always ask that in like one of their open admissions sessions. If GMAT club, MBA fairs, etc. You can always feel free to put that question in the chat box for them to answer as well, because it's a good generic question that they can help answer for their school specifically.
Thanks, Jane. I think that's for the first thing that starts with this introspection, that you need to understand what were the gaps or what were the things that a person particular feel that may have not worked in their favor, and then work towards it and add more value to it. Okay, coming to the next question we have from Aarti. Hi, Aarti. Since I completed my previous academic degree few years ago and have since gained substantial professional experience, would professional recommendation letters be acceptable as part of my application?
Absolutely. So actually MBA programs and even specialized master's programs really want professional letters of recommendation. They don't want academic letters of recommendation. So again, like looking at the, and this is a nice little generic like segue to letters of recommendation. Most schools, you can either find that they've posted what their questions are for recommenders, or or you can kind of Google it and find it, or, sometimes we have it. So you can look at that and say like, okay, who can best answer these questions? It's not about title. You don't want something from a CEO if they don't know you. And they can only be very generic of, I've met him in the elevator and HR said they're in good standing. Great job. So go back to somebody who's maybe given you an annual review that can really talk to your growth and leadership and readiness for the program and can answer those questions. A lot of the times there is a question about, tell us about a time that you had to give them constructive feedback and how did they take it and what was the result. So with that being a question, you really need somebody who knows you. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yes. We have another question from Bhavya. Some schools are asking us to submit all test scores for all exams taken. I took GMAT twice 2 years ago, didn't get a good score, switched to GRE this year and got a 324. Would they view this negatively?
I'm trying to think about which school this is. Are you speaking about Wharton? Maybe Bobby. Yale. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, both of those schools, I think, are open to hearing about growth and what you did differently. So, a setback is one thing, right? Like what, you had a setback. And this is a fantastic example, right? Like the GMAT was not for me. I took it and it didn't go well. And I decided to shift gears and take the GRE. So with that being said, I wouldn't submit my GMAT scores to the school, you can list them or disclose them, but I wouldn't submit them, because if they're submitted, then depending on all the things for rankings and everything, they might have to report something. I would never only report or send in the official top score that you want. The other thing about the GMAT that's slightly tricky is that schools have the ability to log into the GMAC website and look up your scores. So most of them are not going to go to that effort, right? Like, unless your official score didn't come and they're trying to make sure that you're validating the score that you sent, and now there's the super score. So I would say anything related to the GMAT, it's something that they can look up and find. So I would say honesty is the best policy. If you feel like it was disastrous, you can go back and say, I took it just as a preliminary, and this is kind of what happened, and I realized that it wasn't my way of testing, and I did really well. Because with a 324, like, that's a good score. Like, so I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you continuously still score low, then I think you need an optional essay that shows something. But I think you're showing growth, and again, a bit of that introspection of like, this isn't the exam for me, so I pivoted. Instead of like taking the same exam 7 times, I was proactive and did something different.
Yeah, and I think, Jennifer, a lot of students do that. So schools
Yeah.
know people do that. They pivot from GMAT to GRE to improve scores, and getting a better score is always good. It will add more value, so you don't worry about it. And as Jen said, the school anyway has access to all the scores. So even if you mention, you don't mention, they know the scores. It's if they are asking, mention whatever they are telling. Just don't hide anything. Just put in what you have. Okay. Next question we have from Meru. I have 5 years of experience post MS degree with the same employer. Does providing a LOR from a client that I manage instead of my own employer be something that would be looked upon down by the university?
I think it really depends on a few things. One is, why are you using a client instead of your direct supervisor or step supervisor or past supervisor, right? Like, there's some questions there that kind of maybe come up. So I would say that it's worth taking the time to write like 2 sentences as to why you felt like you needed to use the client. And that could be because, I work with like some consultants, they're based inside of an actual client or something like that. So then you can say, I'm utilizing our client because I'm, based out of their office, and they know my day-to-day work, etc. Think about also, if you want to ask a client to write a time that they've had to give you constructive feedback, that might be hard, right? Like, and that's weird. You don't want to damage the relationship by putting them in an awkward spot either. If it's because you're worried about your job safety, that's a different thing, right? Like, so one, I would look for any supervisors that have left the company and maybe work somewhere else. That's, you can definitely do that. And then if you need to use a client and you feel safe that they're not necessarily going to tell your employer, then you can write a short essay to say, or like an optional essay. And sometimes it's in the optional essay, and sometimes it's in where you're writing, who you're putting in as far as your recommender. Either one of those spots, you just want to say, I'm utilizing so-and-so in lieu of my current manager because of the volatility of the market, and I don't want to, jeopardize my job, right? Like something like that. And it's something that's very understandable for an MBA adcom, as long as that is a strong letter of recommendation. I don't know that it will necessarily be a penalty. I have had clients that ended up asking their boss for a recommendation letter and ended up losing their job in the middle of the application process. So again, I don't want to scare anybody. That's not my plan, but I'm just saying, test the waters and figure out what would be the best, because it's a lot easier to use a past supervisor and write that comment than having to be looking for a new job while you're in the MBA application process.
Thanks, Jen. And I think a lot depends on how closely you have worked with whosoever your recommender is. Can he vouch for you? Can he tell about, the stories and everything about you that will have a positive impact on your application? So keep those in. I mean, those that client needs to work very close to you so that he can talk about everything. Next, we have the question from Kumi. Hi, Kumi. If you got admission to a school in the last cycle but didn't accept because the scholarship amount was lower, is it advisable to apply to the same school again if you're applying with a score this year as again last year when you applied with a waiver?
Yeah,
Very
so
tricky
I
question.
understand. So you've changed something in your application that's going to give you merit. I would say that this is one of those moments, right? Like, depends on how you communicated that you weren't going to accept the offer. If you told them that because it wasn't enough scholarship, then and you reapplied and you're hoping to get more scholarship and you've changed your profile, then fantastic. It feels like the communication lines are there. If you declined them but didn't give them any reasons or have any communication, I think that you definitely want to put that in that optional essay or the reapplication essay to say, due to the circumstances, I wasn't able to accept with the scholarship, I'm reapplying with, a GMAT score that's, hopefully merits higher scholarship or something like that. And the reason that I'm a little iffy about this is because schools are ranked based on admissions rates for like sorry. I don't know why my memory is not working super well today, but there's the acceptance rate and how many people actually accept and attend. And so that is a rate that they're going to be measured on. And technically, you ding them. So it's a delicate process. You could absolutely still reapply. But I would just, you could be cautiously optimistic if it's going to work or not, because they've already taken a hit. You've already said no once. What's the difference of like what's going to change things this time to last time? So, again, cautiously optimistic there. If you've had a conversation and they know that they weren't able to give you enough, then you're reapplying in round one. Things could be better.
I think, Jen, that the answer is that mostly that don't keep them in guessing mode. Okay, don't keep them in assumption. They might assume the worst. So if you have clarified in why you declined the acceptance, it's great. I mean, if you haven't, and I think you can still re-emphasize it. Why didn't you accept in the first place? Because that is a question that everybody on the adcom team will have. That so it is always good to explain just to avoid any confusion. Okay, so we have an answer from Meru. You mentioned that thank you. My direct supervisor is the owner of the company, so no one above him for the recommendation. And I was sent to work at the client location for 2 years, and the reason to not keep my supervisor as the LOR was for job safety reason only.
Yeah.
So yeah, the client works then in that case for you. But as Jen mentioned that if it is specifically asking in the recommender details page of your application portal, if they're asking that if you're not giving the supervisor name, please explain these reasons to them so they also have clarity. Next, we have a question from Israel. We know you are describing admission to top US schools, but some European options do not even require a GMAT GRE or have it as optional. Can you speak a little about them?
Yeah. So, as far as like top European UK schools, and we know them well, I would say the top ones mostly do require some sort of score. And so HEC Paris does accept the executive assessment. That's the only European UK school that's going to be in the top 10 to 15 school list. And then some schools have their own internal version of the GMAT or GRE, some sort of admissions test, and usually it's like the IGAT or not IGAT, that's different, but like some sort of admissions test with their brand associated with it. So there are those options. There are some other schools in the UK that I believe do have options for waivers, and there's some in Canada as well. But yeah, so you can definitely apply to those schools with a waiver, and still get it, get it admitted, and potentially gain scholarship. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other specific questions you have, Israel.
Yeah, Israel can also, as we keep on mentioning, that schedule a session with Jen that, we can understand what your profile is, eligibility for your waiver, and which schools you can apply. We can help you with that as well. So I think now we are above the time limit, so we have to conclude the session. And
Yeah.
thank you so much. It was a wonderful session, and thank you so much, Jen. You gave us everybody some actionable points to work on and how they can increase the number of applications. Before we sign off, I also want to tell you what the topic would be for our next coffee session. So, since we are working towards round one, we would be talking more about extended round one deadlines, like Jen showed in the initial part of the session, and we would like to talk more in more details about those schools, how you can plan those applications, etc. So you can attend the session. Jenifer will send the details of the next session, and you can register for it. Also, anybody from India, I'm also want to tell you that GMAC tour is doing some events, and we will be there in their Delhi event and Hyderabad event. So you can just come, say hi. We can evaluate your profile. We can talk, and we can interact about that as well. Thank you. Sorry, Jen, for taking this time about
Oh,
it.
perfect. Yes, please. Like, take any opportunity to meet in person. I think it's amazing when that gets to happen, because the face with the name, and you get to see Priyanka and his son.
Yes, so both of us will be there. Uh, so Jen, anything towards the any two
Uh,
cent of
yeah,
information?
I mean, this is an arduous task, right? Like, submitting these applications. If you are looking for help, that's something ARINGO is here to do. We're here to help. We do offer a 15% discount for folks that did attend the coffee chat, and I'll send out that information in my follow-up email, and that'll also include the recording that we'll post to YouTube. And again, like, feel free to share that with your friends, and give us a like, and that always helps us with that social media side. But beyond that, good luck. And we're wishing you the best, and here to help if you need us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.